For my presentation, I'm going to be talking about the gas and oil prices around the world, how they are rising, and why. As we all know, gas prices are always rising and falling. This is due to the fact that gas prices rely on the price of crude oil. The retail price often follows these oil prices. Oil is a global commodity, and because of this, the price is determined by supply and demand. If the supply is greater than the demand, the prices will fall. If the demand is greater than the supply, the prices will rise. While prices rose steadily in 2021, as of March 2022, the price of oil has risen 58% and retail gas has risen by 24%. Even though gas prices might have felt like they were at an all-time high in the United States, places like France, Canada, China, and Britain have even higher prices. So, why is this happening? For the past 20 years, the United States has been one of the top 3 producing and consuming countries in the world for gas and oil, and currently they are the largest producer in the world. The Keystone XL pipeline, it was owned by a Canadian company called TC Energy Corp and the government of Alberta. The pipeline was a part of a larger project known as Keystone, and this was the 4th stage. It was meant to run from Hardisty, Alberta, Canada, and run through Montana, South Dakota, and end in Steel City, Nebraska. It would have transported 830,000 barrels of heavy oil sands crude oil per day, and then the existing pipelines would then carry the oil to different points in the U.S. However, the cancellation of this did have minimal effect on the current prices of gas. Now, COVID-19, it did cause a significant disruption in global supply chains, including that of oil. While the supply was down, the demand was also down because of daily travel was being cut significantly. Now, the largest and most important aspect of this is the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Conflict began when Russia annexed Crimea in 2014. In 2021, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky made effort into bringing Ukraine into NATO, which is a Western alliance. In response, Russian President Vladimir Putin sent troops to the Ukrainian border in January of 2022. Because of this, international governments such as the United States had to speak out against Russia's actions against Ukraine. Russia has also been consistently in the top 3 in global oil production alongside the United States. As demand increased as the pandemic faded, Russia invaded Ukraine, disrupting an already fragile world market. The rational actor model is a way in which we are able to analyze different aspects of an international event. We must look at 3 things in order to understand why things are acting the way they are. These are actors, institutional rules, and the context. Every situation involves a group of actors that are each working toward the best possible outcome for their goals. They will make the decisions that they do in order to try and maximize their best possible outcome. Institutional rules. Every system has a set of rules that govern the behavior of those involved in the game. These rules can be based on norms and laws. They will also determine what possible outcomes even exist in the situation. The context. External events can drive the costs that are associated with making certain choices. We must have knowledge on the background of a situation and how and why the situation has changed, and if the actors have changed. Now to apply this to the current situation. Every country is being affected by the issues in oil and gas supply. Russia is a large state with major power and influence. They are willing to sacrifice any standing that they may have with democratic countries in order to push their own agenda forward, which is power over Ukraine. The Western world is using this situation to further push the idea that democracy is the way all world politics should function. While gas prices soaring may not benefit its people, standing against Russia sets the precedent that Russia's actions are not backed by the Western world. Within the international community, there are laws and regulations that are set in place so that certain events do not take place. Standards for international relations have been established, such as a country cannot invade another without it being justified. There are also regulations to how much a country can charge for their goods to be brought into another country. These rules need to be followed or there will be consequences. These rules also shape the actions of the actors in international politics. For every situation, there is context. Everything that happens is a result of another action. Context to gas and oil prices on the rise is the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Russia's invasion has been seen as unjustified in the eyes of many countries around the world. Because of this, many countries stepped up in order to limit the power that Russia had. One of the ways that this was accomplished was through tactics of protectionism. This is a way in which a state can try and manipulate international trade to strengthen one or more domestic industries and shelter them from world markets. There can be many reasons for doing this, such as protecting domestic industries from international competition, protecting an infant industry, protecting an industry that is vital to national security, and using it as a defense effort to ward off predatory practices by foreign companies or states. Protectionism comes in three main forms: tariffs, import quotas, and non-tariff barriers. Tariffs are taxes that are imposed on a certain type of imported good as they come into a country. Import quotas are the control of how much of a good can come into one single country. And a non-tariff barrier is a restriction of trade that does not involve a tax or duty placed on the country in which the goods are coming from. In the case of Russia, one can hurt Russia's economy without getting involved in the conflict. Russia is a much wealthier and stronger country than Ukraine. Hurting Russia's economy enough could make it so that they can no longer put as many resources into their conflict with Ukraine. As of June of 2022, the U.S. tariff rate on certain Russian imports has been high as 35%. The most favored nation principle is based on the idea that all countries should treat all their trade partners equally. No country should be more favored than another, and no country should give special treatment to goods or services coming from one trade partner. The World Trade Organization has made this a part of their rules. You cannot give one country lower tariffs, but you can also not give one country higher tariffs. Because of their actions, Russia has lost their position as a most favored nation to the United States. Sanctions are penalties imposed by one country on another in order to push it to stop acting aggressively or breaking international law. Western countries are targeting Russia's wealthy individuals, banks, businesses, and state-owned enterprises. The European Union says that it will ban all imports of oil brought by sea from Russia by the end of 2022. This is a big deal for the European Union because Russia supplies 40% of the gas currently used in the EU. It also said that it will be halting importation of Russian coal by August. The United States is banning all Russian gas and oil imports. The United Kingdom will be phasing out oil imports by the end of 2022. Germany has even frozen plans for opening a major gas pipeline from Russia. As a result of these sanctions, Russia banned the exports of more than 200 products, including telecoms, medical, vehicle, agricultural, electrical equipment, and timber. They have blocked interest payments to foreign investors with government bonds, and Russian firms are not allowed to pay overseas shareholders. They have also stopped foreign investors who hold billions of dollars worth of Russian investments from selling their bonds. Because of these sanctions, Russia's economy is expected to shrink by 10% just in 2022. The world primarily relies on highly developed countries like the United States, Russia, and China for the bulk of their gas and oil production. This is because of their ability to have major markets because of their economic success. The economic accumulation theory is focused on bridging the gap between the wealthy North and the poor South. The capitalist perspective, like in the United States, is focused on the overall efficiency in maximizing economic growth and creating more wealth in both the North and in the South. The socialist perspective, on the other hand, is more concerned with the distribution of wealth that already exists, rather than creating more. This pushes for a large middle class and distribution of wealth that would be the best for the most people. If a country is able to accumulate enough wealth, then more funding can be put into creating a standing wealth. This includes structures like buildings, factories, roads, and other things that can make the standard of living better in that country. In order for capital to grow in these developing countries, the country must have an economic surplus. This happens when capital is used to create more capital. When this happens, the money is invested into the production of capital rather than using it for consumption. Unfortunately, many oil-rich countries suffer from something called the resource curse. This is when a country that is rich in a natural resource, but it is unable to economically succeed from it. Typically, this happens when a country focuses too much of its capital and labor force into only a few resource-dependent industries. When referring to the gas crisis, creating markets in other and poorer countries that could benefit the entire world if they were able to succeed. This would make it so that the gap in the market created by Russia would be found, and it could also help a developing country in creating some capital. It could also give these countries an opportunity for development with the creation of capital and eventually an economic surplus to hopefully put back into their economy. Instead of relying solely on the wealthiest countries for gas and oil production, it is also an option to pass the responsibility on to developing countries to give them a footing in the international market.